I hope that you're all aware that this is as Christmassy as I get. Can you say hello? Good job, boy. He's very sleepy. Hello my friends and happy Yuletide. Well, it's not quite Yule proper yet, it is December, and that means I get to tell you about all of the cozy wintertime things that I like to do to boost my tarot reading during the Yuletime period. So what is Yule anyway? We may have heard it a lot in the past, and it's generally referenced in Christmas media. I do, in fact, make the Yuletide gay. Contrary to popular belief, though, Yule and Christmas aren't actually synonymous. Yule comes from the Old Norse word yule, which also appears in Old English as yule. Yes, I googled the pronunciation of this, and they are definitely supposed to be the same. Language, right? Yule is generally used to refer to the hunting season that occurs just after the autumn harvest, which would generally start in late November and early December. Though people aren't exactly sure when this tradition started, references to this time period and traditions that stem from it can be traced back to as far as 1,000 years ago. It's kind of heartwarming to think that people were still celebrating in the same ways that we do in these same places over 1,000 years ago. Celebrations would cover a bunch of Germanic, Scandinavian, and Celtic holidays, so referring to the whole season as Yule became a trend across most of Northern Europe, and subsequently the world after the rise of Christianity and colonization. But what about modern Yule being celebrated as the winter solstice? You guessed it, the Wiccans are back at it again. Gerald Gardner celebrated with many druids and noted their observations of the solstice as well as the equinoxes as part of their magical practices, and then proceeded to adopt it into Wicca. Though the winter solstice being observed and celebrated is prevalent in many traditions much before this, the popularity of celebrating the solstice skyrocketed with the adoption of Wicca in many pagan spaces. Whether you celebrate Christmas, Yule, Hanukkah, or even Kwanzaa, all of these fall under the traditional Yuletide period of November to early January. And now that we have a little bit of history under our belts, let's talk about some of the things that we can do to make the Yuletide that little bit more gay. Welcome to my altar. Yes, I am wearing a different outfit now. I had to film all of these parts on multiple days. As I mentioned before, Yule is something that has been celebrated by many people all over the world, for varying reasons. And in the Northern Hemisphere, this tends to be the time of year that gets very dark, very cold, and very scary. So, in the Northern Hemisphere, Yule traditions tend to revolve around light, heat, and emotional warmth. While Halloween is generally the time we talk about being wary about spirits and entities causing mischief, we don't talk a lot about the benefits of venerating the spirits of people that we have lived with and who have contributed to who you are today during the Yule period. Calling on our ancestors, especially ones that you knew while they were alive, can help support the emotional warming aspect of Yule. I personally like to add drinks and other symbols that those people enjoyed in life to help invite them into the festivities. A lot of families will make up a place at their dining tables during dinners in order to be able to show that that spirit is welcome in their home still, and that they will always be welcome to join them. But what's most important about a practice like this is to make sure that you are bringing in the warm memories of that person into your home. Reminiscing about them, bringing out pictures, writing them letters, or finding letters that they have written. Finding items that belong to them or were gifted to you by that person. Even lighting vigil candles or burning incense or smoke cleansing can also work here, because it invites more light and more heat into the home. We are looking for the good feely-wheelies here though. Happy crying is fine and all, but don't upset yourself too much with this practice. We're aiming to express our gratitude for the time that we had with these people, and generally restoring our faith in humanity if we can. If you don't want to be doing this continually over the Yule period, you can opt for having a ritual day where you invite your ancestors into the home. This could be on the solstice or Christmas Day, or any other significant day in between. I tend to alternate the day every year depending on my schedule. The 16th of December works for me personally because it happened to be the day of my granddad's funeral the year that he died, and he was a very connecting factor to all of the ancestors that you see on this wall here. I also pick a ritual day because I tend to invite people over on the solstice, so I have a day for the dead and then a day for the living. Everyone gets to be warm and cozy. Speaking of warmth though, let's talk about spices. You're also in my spice cupboard. Welcome. I hope it smells good. So, I like spicy things anyway. As you can tell from the amount of harissa seasoning, I have in my cupboard. But the Christmas spice mix is also very good for improving things like blood circulation, aiding in digestion, and also reducing stress. Things like cinnamon, clove, ginger, vanilla, and even oranges are wonderful additions to your diet during the colder months anyway, but they also have some magical properties, specifically of supporting spiritual and psychic abilities. You could also include something like allspice into this mix because that attracts luck and money. I personally like to add things like this into my tea and into my husband's coffees. While I am currently drinking a jasmine tea, I do have a tea that is very appropriate to the season, and it is this spicy orange and ginger tea from Off Black Teas. It's a black tea, so it's a black tea base with orange and ginger in it, and my little brother got it for me on my birthday of last year, I think. So this is something that I like to drink during the winter time, but this is also a great flavour palette for sweet treats, especially baked goods. Adding milk to your recipes, animal or plant-based, can also be useful in boosting vitamin D, which is going to be especially useful when it gets darker. Our bodies synthesize vitamin D using the sun, so we need to supplement it when we can't get out into the sun, or when we can't be in the sun for long periods of time, such as when it starts getting darker, like 3 p.m. This also supports things like bone health and healthy skin. And is especially important for some of my darker skinned friends out there, as more melanin in the skin can reduce the amount that we can synthesize vitamin D, up to 25% less than our fairer skinned counterparts, according to the New England Journal of Medicine. So if you're already deficient, then you might end up running into some problems if you aren't boosting it during these darker times. These spices aren't only tastes that you can add to your recipes, but also scents that you can introduce into your home. You can add them in through candles, wax melts, incense, simmer pots. I will have to make a full post about simmer pots, because while I don't do them very often, they are very good tech to know. You can even add these spices as offerings to your altar, though I do recommend that you add these in their solid state. Cinnamon sticks as opposed to powders. If there are seasonal foods that are native to the area that you live in, or traditional to your culture, then I also recommend adding these into your diet and into your offering rotation as well. We can use these to help not only connect us to the land that we're on, but also the ancestors that helped us be where we are today. Okay, I will meet you back in the living room in a second. You are not making this easier. It's okay, bud. Yeah, go on. You can go. So now that I've given you some supplementary things that you can do over this time of year, let's talk about Yule tarot readings and how we can create them and make the most of these spreads throughout this season. I am going to have to change the angle so you can see those, so I'll meet you there. There we go. Should be able to hear me just fine from here. I'm going to be using the custom spreads page from the Tarot Journal to demonstrate. You can get this on my Patreon storefront right now, and I'm also going to be adding it to my coffee in the next few days. So the Yule season is dark and cold, and generally speaking it's used to look at memories and the shadows, specifically shedding light onto the shadows, so the readings that we do at this time should be best suited to shadow work. And also reflective practices and readings about the past and its effect on the present. So... Oh no! I didn't light the candle! Oh, that's pretty. I don't actually know what emotional state I'm feeling today. Let's go with open. So now that we've done the easy bits, we're going to consider what kind of reading we want to do within the theme. We could lean into memories, or what memories or past events are having an effect on us and how we could learn from the past. We could also lean into the shadow and how to bring parts of our shadow selves into the light of our consciousness. I'm personally gonna take the shadow approach. Yeah, so let's write that down and see what I want to explore. Now we can consider the size that we want this reading to be. So are we thinking about a bigger spread or a smaller one? This can be based on the shape that you want. So if you consider making more of like a kind of Christmas tree shape like this, or maybe more of a crescent shape like this. You might want to adjust the number of cards that you have depending on the kind of shape that you're feeling. The size of the spread can also be determined by things like time, or deck style, I think I'm going to go with a crescent shape today because I want my reading to be about how I can embrace the shadow and connect it to the rest of my consciousness. This made a lot of sense to me because the crescent moon is partially light on the side that you can see and partially shadow on the side that you can't. Adding these reflections of the themes in the reading can almost act like a sigil for the theme itself. I should probably make a video about sigils at some point. Let me know if you want to see that. Anyway, so now I've determined the shape of my reading, which kind of determines how many cards I want. I'm thinking 5 for each point on the crescent moon. From the top point to the center section, coming all the way back to the lightest middle pot, but then doing the same on the bottom side as well. So now I know how many cards I would like, what theme I would like to use, and the shape of the reading in general. Let's write down the full question too. How can I connect a part of my shadow to my greater self? Greater self in this context is going to refer to my consciousness, the part of myself that I am aware of, as opposed to the part of myself that's in my subconscious. Now that we know where each of these cards wants to be, we can start numbering and assigning meaning to each card in this reading. I'm going to be starting from the topmost point and working my way around this crescent. This is also generally where a lot of people get stumped because they understand the general idea but they can't piece together all of the details. The key is to create a story for the theme that we've chosen. So we need to get from one point of the story all the way to the other. In this example, I'm going to be working from one point of the crescent all the way to the opposite point of the crescent. At the top, number 1, we'll have what is currently in the shadow that needs to come out. This is because this is close to the shadowy part of the moon. Next, for number 2, we can have the method of shadow work that's needed to bring this shadow part into the light. At the fullest light part of the moon, for number 3, this middle card, we can have what happens when that part, number 1, gets integrated into the greater whole. In this particular reading, because we have a reflective second side as well, I like the idea of seeing what I don't have to work on. What I'm holding on to that can be left in the past, because I'm a bit of a worrywart in that sense. I hold on to things that make me think that I'm a bad person, and this is what happens when you punish a neurodivergent person for being neurodivergent. So we're going to have the same idea, but just in reverse, with number 4 being the method of releasing this shadow part. So method of release. And the furthest point, the bit closest to the shadow, being the actual part that I need to release. So number 5 is part that needs release. And voila! This is a perfectly working spread that you can use for Yule or any time that you would like to explore the next piece of shadow work that you'd like to do. We can then keep a hold of this reading for whenever we would like to try it again. We can keep notes on it elsewhere, or we can keep referring back to this spread. In this notes section here, I'm also going to suggest some preparations that I personally do for readings at this time of year. So I tend to adjust my routine with adding more candles. This adds more light into the readings, which again reflects the themes of bringing light, warmth, and happiness into the home during the Yuletide period. I also opt to use seasonal scents. This is generally incense for me, but it can also be used for the candles that you use and any other ways that you change the smell in your home. I also generally add a seasonal tea, generally one that contains some of the spices that I suggested in my previous section. So generally cinnamon and orange. Cinnamon and orange are generally my personal favorites. Okay, now that we've done that, I'm gonna meet you back in a more comfortable position. Okay. Sorry for the slight gap. Yeah, I had to go and shower and wash my hair in between shots because I could feel my scalp crawling off of my head. I hope this video could give you some ideas for your Yuletide celebrations and practices this year. I'm not really a Christmas person necessarily, but I am a cozy person, so any excuse to get cuddled up under a blanket with a hot beverage I will jump at. Let me know what kind of spreads you made for yourself. I love seeing what other people's imaginations come up with for their personal tarot practices. And if you like what you see here, like, comment, subscribe maybe? I also have a Patreon where I offer weekly readings, tarot lessons. We have a book club where we're currently looking at The Pictorial Key to the Tarot by Arthur E. Waite. You can also get one-to-one readings with me via Ko-fi, Patreon, and Etsy again. I did close my Etsy for the majority of this year, but I am going to be reopening it come the new year. I hope that your days are merry and bright this Yuletide, and as always, stay blessed, my friend.